You do this thing.
Hello to everybody. So, who is present and who are watching us now. And today this is the 6th laser talk in Brussels. And we will have the subject, tangible sound, post-digital instruments, audio-visualization technology, and extended reality. Few words about what it is, laser talk. This is the Leonardo Art Science Evening Rendezvous. This is a program of international gathering that brings artists, scientists, humanists, and technologists together for informal presentation, performances, and conversation. The vision of to the cultural environment of the region by fostering interdisciplinary dialogue and opportunity for community building. Today we will discuss materialization of digital matter into sound object, embodied music interactions, spatialization technology to enable and investigate synchronization between musical players and using movement and sound, the physical aspects of musical human-machine interaction, reinterpretation of the physical value of the well-established culture, technique, creating tangible user interfaces. We have 3 panelists here who is with us on air, and I would like to start to introduce you. So this is Claire Williams. She's an artist and she's working at the Board of Science, Technology, Arts and Textile. She sees herself as an artist and researcher and that tried to work between these fields, finding a common language, creating and amplifying specific interaction between different mediums. Her obsessions lays mostly around data, sound and ancient textiles, trying to materialize digital matter, imperceptible and inaudible information found in our super-saturated techno environment. She likes to work with the unstable media, researching ways to create specific tools, usages or techniques to give us a sensitive experience of our daily environment. In her work, she mainly uses textile technique, hacked machine, do-it-yourself electronics, open source software and hardware. She graduated with a master degree in textile design from ENSAF Belcampo and from Fresnoy National Studio of Contemporary Art. Another speaker who is with us. Sorry, I'm always not. This is Bavo van Kerrebroeck. He's a researcher in the field of embodied musical interaction, extended reality, and human-computer interaction. He works with extended reality and audio spatialization technology to enable and investigate the dynamical processes underlying coordination between musical players. For this purpose, he develops enriched and mediated musical contests in which people and machines interact and can meaningfully express themselves. He obtained a master's in engineering and computer music of the Leuven University and Sorbonne University, did a research internship in UQAM, and worked as the analyst for IBM and European Space Agency. He is currently finalizing his PhD at the Institute of Psychoacoustics and Electronic Music, APM. His work has been published in the Frontiers and Computer Human Interaction journals and has been represented by ISMC and expanded animation at Electronica. And our last and the first speaker because we started this laser talk with Enrique Tomás, and he is a sound artist and postdoc researcher who dedicates his time to finding new ways of expression and play with sound, art and technology. His work explores the intersection between sound art, computer music, locative media and human-machine interaction. As an individual artist, Tomás' activity is centered around ultra-noise, .es, and focuses on performances and installation with extreme and immersive sounds and environments. He has exhibited and performed in the spaces of Ars Electronica, Sonar, Aircam, Pont, and many, many more, and in galleries and institutions throughout Europe and Latin America, TAMLab, Tangible Music Lab, at the University of Linz. Dr. Enrique Tomás, postdoc researches at TAMLab, he has also already his PhD, and after maybe he will tell us a few words about it. So, and maybe I would like to start with your presentation, so that you can give us some view of your work.
Yeah, sure. So I have a presentation obviously prepared. And I announce I have 58 slides. So see you tonight now. So I'm okay summarizing things. Thanks for the invitation, Alexandra, and thanks also to Imal for inviting me to perform 2 days ago. So I think it was a great, so to say, connection of events, and I'm really happy to be here. So my talk is gonna be around tangible music and how I understand it, and before defining things, I would like to play a video about a work I presented 2 days ago, and maybe also for understanding very well what is the type of things I'm doing, and later we can go with the blah blah blah, okay? now you know a little bit better what I'm doing. Let's go to talk about things. Well, I'm obviously an artist working with digital media, so digital interfaces. And I wanted to present it a little bit, just if you're not an expert on what a digital interface is, maybe we can talk a little bit about it. What I have chosen musical interfaces as my place to locate my art is because, well, it's a strange field. It's an awkward field. It's just you think that it's a place where you can do anything, but actually not. On the one hand, you have the thing of interacting with the machine and understanding what happens in the machine, but actually, what happens is this: that it's a cultural event surrounded by people where unexpected things happen, and also it's not that, I don't know, neutral, but it becomes a kind of like Manovich said. It becomes a hybrid, strange, often awkward mix of between the conventions of what the academic informatics are, but also what we are doing with electric guitars, maybe. So this is a postdoc, a doc researcher at my lab, and simply it's like that. She's a Chinese living in Cologne, everything quite mixed. And these are students of mine, for example, when they finish one course in the, it's not what we expect about playing music sometimes. So the thing is that all these kind of medium becomes really problematic, so that at the end, those contrasts between culture, between informatics, between technology, art, science, creates a kind of aesthetic field for us to develop our career, where we can be really critical with the things others are doing or have done, and think about what could be music in a more tangible and embodied way. So the second part of this kind of work is notation. Notation is the art of, inscribing, engraving music. And if you think about it, it's a way of thinking about music, but on the paper, or on the, on a system which allows you projecting your intentions, musical intentions. If we are going really philosophical, we can say that, the system defines what you can do with music, etc., etc. I'm not going to enter into that. But basically, the question for me is like, can we see digital interfaces, musical interfaces, as also objects of notation? Because as we have seen, all interfaces, all these systems that we use, computers, etc., they have also a representational part, right? That is, the functional part is how the system works. No, it tells us, where the cursor is in the screen. But also there is a kind of notation, inherent notation in the system, which actually we as artists, we are defining, configuring, shaping all the time for making our works. So at the end, it's not so easy to separate what is the work from, its programming, the whole system. And this is why I see that there is an intimate connection between, the work and finally the notation, the instrument, and also the work. So what can be represented here? Obviously, here we are representing nodes, like triggering nodes, for example, and then changing parameters, etc. But where does this come from, actually? Well, from machines like that, and from machines like that. Knobs were there, faders was also there, but they were analog, and obviously all these machines are inspired by others. But then the next question is, okay, what can be represented here, right? What type of music can be represented here? There are here some aspects of music which are really, really engraved in the object, right? Or what can be actually represented in that. So, this brought me philosophically in my work, in my research, to ask me what's the role of representation and notation in what we are doing. And I got quite inspired by the work of William Forsythe. The choreographer actually has a series of works called choreographic objects, in which he's setting up a choreography in an environment. So he's not telling the people what to dance, he just puts space with affordances, with things to do, limiting your movements, but also making you move in another way. So the people are entering these spaces, or these spaces, these, right, pendulums, or this whitey bouncy castle, which is quite famous. And then the choreography is actually inherent in the objects he creates. So he's not writing a choreography, but it's in the object, right? And this also is not it's an old idea. I think that, for example, we should be more and more inspired by people like Apollinaire and Mallarmé, right? And when he turns things, around and back from the idea of reading the system, but he's looking here at the performance of Louis, and then says, okay, there is not really a choreography to read here for the dancer. The dancer is basically disengaged from writing, but he's creating a kind of poem that is with her movements, right? Where is this poem actually? In the body of the artist, in the system itself. And then coming back to today, this is the situation we have. This is our instruments today, right? Or we can go hardcore and explore all the parameters coming here. So basically we're in a situation in which human-computer interaction, all this field of programming for music is saturated with representations. So on the one hand, we want to be super embodied free, but we are just connected to this symbolic, and many people have said hermeneutic, than actually an extension of the body, right? That we are, when playing music, we are not really extending a body, but we are extending our, so to say, language more than our body. So there is a kind of tension between how much we are embodied or how much we become hermeneutic. We are using symbols, or we are actually using a kind of relationship with materials, which allow us exploring it in a more, in a less symbolic way, I think. So what I did is actually having these tensions clear. It was, making things like that. So what is the notation of an object like that? Because actually we, as humans, we begin seeing symbols everywhere, right? It's really strange. But if we want to see this as a score, it's actually a score. Why not? And then I began to make graphic designs like that, and transforming them into objects, or those ones, this one, right? Or that one. Right. So I started to explore materiality of things and engraving my ideas with them, and bringing them to an instrument. That is basically what you saw in the video at the beginning. These surfaces are engraved with a musical intention, so those profiles that you saw and patterns are actually notation, right? Graphic notation, but they also work as a tactile notation. When you are touching them, you are feeling the nuances of what you are playing. What I do in my work is analyzing the micro noises that you're doing, and with a mathematical way or system to classify these sounds, I'm resynthesizing the sound, the final sound that you hear with a machine learning algorithm. The idea is that every time you're making a gesture, you're making some noise, you make a profile of some mathematical descriptor. And the system is able to resynthesize those, finding sounds in a database in the computer, which actually fit better at every moment with what you are doing. So if you play something like really in the paper, then the computer finds grains of sound, making those profiles as well, but with other sonorities. Okay. So I continued doing series of objects like that, different materials, like linear, one-dimensional, to explore things like that, or three-dimensional, things that you can, handheld objects, etc., exploring different configurations. And all these objects are instruments, but also the notation of what I'm playing. And this is actually the patterns that you saw in the video presented at the beginning. etc. But what I am now finishing, so what I was quite interested to look at, and this is a kind of provocation and message that I want to throw in this talk, that I've been taking a look at a lot at how people touch in this course. Right? Like these ones, no? Like if you see these fingers are different than those fingers, or like those fingers. Right? And then this made me ask myself, why do people approach things in different ways, right? That I did. Where is this kind of, I don't know, where is the education, and the filters that we get to approach an object when we can use it, no? Because every day nowadays we are just with the mobile phone, with the tip of your finger, and our brain is kind of, we are just touching with our brain with one finger everything, right? But what happens when you allow people touching all the work and just really go deep into that? And this is the conclusion of what I wanted to bring to this conversation. That myself, I'm a sound artist, programming a lot. I have a degree in engineering as well, and doing a lot of things with computers every day. But I think that the way to escape from this paradigm of filtering the things we are doing with our bodies is basically coming from the filters that we impose. So the body is actually, like I say here, it's not my idea, it's Kittler. The body is the locus that plays upon which the various technologies that our culture is connected, and they inscribe themselves. So basically, taking more into account our bodies, the noisiness of our fingers, the possibilities for contingency that our bodies are bringing, directly we can add an escape from these impossibilities that we have when programming a system. That at the end we are using symbols, we are using a computer, we know, with all the limitations of actual informatics. But let's put the body in the middle, right, and see what happens. And the second is the acknowledgement that we have to bring that, well, culture is a kind of the regime that bodies are passing through. No? This can be taken from different political, aesthetic perspectives, but finally we are domesticating kind of an animal. No? And then when I see different people touching, I also see what kind of person could that be. No? How it relates to the things that, how much that person is touching other things, and how what kind of relationship has with the world. Right? So, well, this is a little bit the provocation that I wanted to bring. We have the field of human-computer interaction that I'm quite embedded into, but let's put the body in the middle, and then let's see how, well, these domestications that we are doing, we can escape from that, right? So, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting. So now I would like that we will do presentation that Claire will prepare for us. So just pass it on here. And here.
I'll do a presentation focused more on of my installations, but generally my work consists of trying to sense or materialize the electromagnetic activity that is in our environments. It goes through different types of bodies, everything, all these radio waves, these cosmic waves, these voicemail, telephone, GSM waves, and so yeah, most of my work is in trying to build sometimes very artisanal and very DIY instruments to sense them, like antennas, or sometimes I will collaborate with bigger antennas like the Royal Observatory of Belgium, where I will use radioscopes. So every project is trying to set and making it cool. So here's one project. So I'll show a video and it says already a lot, but I can go more in depth. Ce projet s'appelle Zorias. J'avais un peu l'envie de créer une sorte de matière-énergie. Donc je me suis inspirée pour cela des phénomènes météorologiques qu'on peut trouver sur Terre, donc comme les aurores boréales et les éclairs. Et ces éléments avaient en commun le fait que ce soit tous des matières qui soient en état plasma, qui est le 4e état de la matière. Le défi un peu, c'était d'imaginer de créer une sorte d'observatoire poétique où on pourrait regarder et interagir avec cette matière-énergie depuis la Terre, parce que le plasma ne peut pas physiquement avoir lieu sur Terre à cause des différentes pressions atmosphériques. Je suis partie de là d'inspiration de machines du 19e où on pouvait créer un état plasma en créant des environnements scellés. J'ai donc ici travaillé avec du verre où on a inséré différents gaz nobles. Ces gaz vont de l'hélium, du néon, du krypton, de l'argon. Et ces gaz nobles, qui sont normalement invisibles à l'œil nu, sont ici ionisés avec un champ magnétique qui nous permet d'un seul coup de les révéler et d'avoir ces différentes couleurs, ces différentes formes. Autour de ce grand disque plat, on a un anneau où les gens sont invités à venir poser leurs coudes et leurs mains sur leurs oreilles et ils vont pouvoir ressentir et entendre une activité de grouillements différents, de différents sons et de différentes vibrations. Et ce sont en fait des traductions de données qui sont captées par différents radiotélescopes qui sont déployés dans le monde. Et ici qu'on récupère à travers un petit logiciel où on va sonifier ces données pour les rendre tangibles. Le plasma pulse aussi en même temps à la même activité solaire. En effet, notre étoile active, le Soleil, est aussi une grande boule de plasma. Et donc l'idée, c'était qu'on puisse avoir ces éléments qui pulsent ensemble, comme si ces choses étaient liées par les mêmes forces et les mêmes énergies. So for this project, the idea was to try and create an observatory in an exhibition space. And here, as you said before, I come more from a design background and textiles. And I quite enjoy in trying to create my own kind of machines or electronics. So when I finished my textile design, I started getting really interested in electronics, and this led me to electronic textiles. But what really interested me was how all of a sudden you can create your own electronics and circuits and machines, things that you decide them to do, and not the ones that you buy, which are already built in and decided by other engineers, software and joining with this aspect. And it kind of opened up, I think, a way also of saying, okay, we don't need like hard keys to enjoy things. How can we, think of the world or interact with the world through another way of seeing things? And also coming from a more maybe feminist perspective, it's also how we can also think of what kind of machines we want in our world, and that we reappropriate also these spaces that are not always very appropriable usually. So this gave me a whole way of thinking, and so many of my installations are inspired a lot by the 19th century electronics crafts, so I go a lot in these old museums and I look at how people in the 19th century were making every single thing from in their lab, in their kitchen, not a real lab, but kitchen. And so for this project I work, for example, with a scientific glass blower. So here we make these glass and then inserted different kinds of noble gases to make plasma. But here was trying to, I see it as a big instrument or machine. And maybe, I don't know if it's very clear, but so the data also is live. So every 15 minutes I take the last data of the solar activity and it's directly going in the installation. So each time you go in the installation, it will never be the same if there is more or less the difference of the EMF activity of the sun. So yeah, I go a lot into trying to mix these crafts of glass, textiles, all these crafts and blend them in and trying to make these kind of sensitive places where we can reflect on these things. I have maybe, sorry, here's a bit of documentation. So also I enjoy either collaborating with artisans or making things myself, but here are also some of the inspirations. So these are like the machines we were building to try and understand what was electricity, energy in the time. So we were simulating, small lightning strikes. And Gessler was a famous, he was a craftsman and scientific. So these also, ways of trying to, these people in the 19th century, which is a period I'm very interested in also for different reasons and archives, is also how people would make these experimental science machine where they would try and see what was happening in this invisible world. So what was in this ether, before we would call it the ether, what was happening, these energies. So it would lead to very interesting experiments like telepathy, using telepathic waves to send information, or see ghosts, and all these machines are quite interesting in an artistic way because they also reflect on how do we live in these different realities. Here are the small, if you want to see the Russian lab, so it's also going to Russia and finding very old, reviving abandoned scientific techniques because these techniques are not used anymore. So going in Russia and finding these teams who build up all these their labs, and they go and do cruising in the abandoned chemical Russian factories to bring back big bottles of noble gases. So here we're doing the plasma. Here's the lab. What else? So I think just to maybe make the transition, many of my inspirations also comes from, I think, anthropology, where I enjoy also, since I come from textiles, there's this way also of how textiles are also this very thin line between a reality and another one. And a lot of my work with the antennas and all these things came a lot with the reflection of a certain type of embroidery that is found in the Shibibu Kunumbu communities who live in the Amazonian forest. And they, the women embroider very intricate, very fractal patterns. And what is observed there is that they sing this song, that is the Icaro. And while they are singing the song, they both make the same pattern. And they have this way, like not in a Western way we think of notation, but a way which we don't really understand, where they can embed these Icaro songs in the embroideries and in the patterns. And then these embroideries are worn by a shaman, and the shaman will reread these embroideries and re-see them in the world and call the spirits to come and heal the patient that is here in the ceremony. So I think this, for example, is an example that really set off a lot of my work, because I was like, oh, how can this very thin line of textiles, these little bit of wool and cotton, suddenly be something that gives us access to these invisible world. And sound also is interesting because even if I come from things that are very tangible, sound is totally intangible. It's an energy, and how are these energies going around us? And of course, when we put music in a concert, all our bodies will start to move and we interact in this kind of strange way. So how these vibrations and these movements are things that I think that I am interested in. So.
Thank you very much. It's exciting work, and really found very interesting that it all is some sort of the regard back what was done, and also it's true because if we'll take 19th century, it's a lot of things was constructed some kinds of the not primitive but like not really equipped like now laboratory, and so going back to such kinds of the experiments that was done in 19th century. Also, it's like now in 16mm films that more or less dead, and suddenly a lot of artists start to be interested in the process, and that not only start interested in the process how to film, but also how to develop. So just there is no anything that disappeared completely, and I think this is very nice thing that is happening between people and between artists, because they are more or less some kind of keeping this trace of memory, like in your installations. And I would like to, ask Bavo that.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Alexander, for the invitation, and thank you, Enrique, also for yours. I think from Enrique I get like the embodiment, the body that will come back, and when I heard you looking back to the historical, I think I'm going more futuristic in the sense that the technologies that I'm working with, of course, there's a long history to it, but I'm mainly using them to create or think of where they go next, let's say, the future. So it's about enriching musical interactions. My name is Bavo, I'm a PhD researcher in Ghent University at IPAM, the research team, and I'll briefly give an introduction or an overview of my PhD, of the work that I've been doing. And I start with the two main questions that I'm dealing with. The first one is about technology to enrich musical interactions, so to think of the potential of technology for this. And a second main question is to improve understanding of musical interactions, so more fundamental on the actual dynamics and things happening inside the musical interaction. For these questions, of course, I'm building, the title is not there, but it's fine. It's rooted in two main frameworks. The first one is embodied music cognition, which views the role of a body as a mediator for meaning formation. So it talks about how our body influences what we perceive and vice versa. And this theoretical framework also considers the body as a way to access the intentional level of the people we engage with. So if you're involved in a musical interaction, our bodies communicate and give us access also to the intentions of the people that we engage in interaction with. So this is a first big theoretical framework. We could talk for days about what's inside, but just want to introduce it. A second big framework of theory that I'm using is called coordination dynamics, coming from the dynamical systems literature. And so my work is also based on or using principles from this theory, which basically talks about how an agent is interacting with the environment. It's about this feedback between action and perception, and seeing an object of observation, so it can be an interaction between two people, as a closed system in which dynamics are happening, in which they execute forces upon each other and getting back information from each other. So having these dynamics closed system, out of which behavioral dynamics can emerge. So it's also principles of self-organization and leading to stable phases, fluctuations, things like that. It's a big framework, but I hope maybe the examples that I will give sort of will show the links to the theory behind it. So what these are two studies that I did in the past years, where I'm using extended reality, extended reality technologies to investigate the dynamics happening inside the musical interaction. I'll briefly introduce them. The first one is a piano duet, so two pianists performing the piece Piano Face composed by Steve Reich, of which one of the pianists is wearing a headset and playing the piece while being immersed in a virtual environment. The other study is a percussion duo, so two people trying to drum polyrhythms together while being in an augmented reality environment. I have some material that hopefully will make it less abstract. But first, so the Piano Face piano duo that are playing together, and I will just go to the next slide. Basically what we did, or what I tried to do, was have these two pianists play together in three different conditions. The first one, where they are just seeing each other as real, so just as a normal thing. They're wearing the headset and I'm using the cameras on the headset, so the player of the pianist is the first person view of him or her that is seeing the other pianist and playing the piece like normal, let's say. A second condition is where the other player, he or she is wearing a motion capture suit and controlling a virtual person. So the first person view that you're seeing here is seeing the other playing as an avatar, but controlled in real time by a human. And a third condition where there is no other player, it's an algorithmically controlled virtual person. So there's no second real pianist behind it, and the pianist is playing the piece with a virtual agent. And I will just go back to this slide because this talk was also a bit about tangibility and tactile things, so I thought this is just a very rude demonstration of me aligning the virtual and the real spaces upon each other. I thought it could have been interesting. It's, of course, when you immerse these people inside the virtual environment, they're wearing the headsets, you have to take very good care on aligning the real and the virtual worlds to each other. As soon as you break this thing, you break the immersed thing. So here you see the virtual piano and me doing, you can do this in code, but I'm just doing it with my hands, aligning the two worlds together. And eventually the pianist is getting some virtual hands, and the piano, of course, it looks like a real piano with keys moving, but obviously they're just virtual. So that's the first study. The second study that I wanted to introduce is a completely different thing, but still an interaction between two people. We did this both in an experimental study as a public performance. Here you see a still from the public performance, and it was two drummers. I think, a better image. This was the view still shown to live audience, physically present in the space. It's being projected in the back. You see a bit of the audience on the and also an online audience witnessing the interaction between the two people, trying to drum these rhythms. You see a video of the two players and a view of how each player is seeing each other. So they are wearing a HoloLens, an augmented reality device, and they see each other as a virtual person, as a hologram in the space, allowing them to interact with each other. They are, I will show the video after. So they are physically separated. They are not situated in the same space. They are in two different buildings, and wearing these HoloLenses, they're capable of interacting with each other in real time. I have a small video, I think. This is the final part of the performance. So they did this for 4 minutes, trying to drum, and at the end, I also showed to the audience a couple of tweaks. Like once you put people inside the virtual environment, you can obviously make very easy changes. You can change the perspective of the play of the audience. You can insert animations, agents of earlier recordings, so they're playing with each other while playing with other algorithmic control people. You can change the appearance, and this is really simple. For instance, this one was just more of a game that we introduced very late, so it's not working very smoothly yet. but they're playing kind of 3D Pong with each other. So you have this virtual ball that is shared. Imagine that people are in different buildings, which for us, what was interesting, at the end you see the people really mirroring each other's posture, and I got really the impression that they forgot that this ball obviously does not exist and that they are really separated by 100 meters of each other. The dynamics and the coordination between each other seemed very natural and seemed very automatic. And these are, of course, the things that me as a researcher are interesting. I will skip that. This is a very simple picture. Actually, what I'm trying to investigate. So it's two people that are interacting in a closed loop. And I'm trying to look at the dynamics between these people, the moments of stability, of fluctuation, how they adapt to each other. We all know when we're listening or engaging with music or engaging with each other, we can have these moments of real, almost magic contact with each other, where the interaction is not too rigid, is also not too fluctuating, too chaotic, but you get to this sort of flow in the interaction. And I'm interested in the underlying principles that create this kind of smooth interaction. And to do that, we record a lot of data, so quantitative data of different levels, both from the experience, the bodily co-regulation, and more the musical data. We record a lot of data, and then for these two experiments on the piano face, we compare the data across the conditions. So in the first one is playing with a human, playing with an avatar, or playing with an agent. And for the rhythm part, it's more the realism of the partner that we try to investigate. So it's they played once not seeing each other, once seeing each other as this virtual avatar, and once being in the same space. You didn't see this in the video, but they were both just drumming like normal, being in the same space. We look at the dynamics that are happening in the data and try to see the causes and the hurdles, let's say, to create a good interaction, and try to distill patterns from that, or principles. So these studies were mainly dealing with the question of to improve the understanding of a musical interaction, but the other sort of line of research in the PhD has been on using technology to increase the expressive potential of a person, a musician. It came forth out of our lab. We have a very nice lab there in Ghent with 80 speakers fully surrounding the space. So often when there were people coming into the lab, a composer, an artist, or somebody that wants to create, you get these 80 speakers, and obviously how do you interact, how do you compose with such a technologically heavy setup? And so the purpose that I'm trying to do a little bit is to think of a new kind of instrument, to think of a new kind of tool to compose in such a space, building on different fields, so from human-computer interaction, spatialization systems, and actual principles of music performance. Think of a new instrument, but trying to move away from the really, even though everything that I'm showing is highly technological, but we try to move away from the emphasis on this technology and try to complement the design of these instruments, also with artistic and scientific know-how, so to make it more fluent and more to increase the expressive potential. This kind of study has been done in a couple of projects. One where we use an album from Tineke de Meijer and Duncan Spiegman. They were very generous in giving us their audio tracks and the poem, and we reinterpreted that into a spatial audio composition. Another one, poem Ingenious by Katrina Portius, also a little bit the same paper. I'm going to be just showing this to present the way of working in the lab, where we start from some poetic material or start from a basis, interacting and trying to think and work together with the people creating that material, and me as the more engineer, technologist that is trying to not capture the hidden meaning inside these poems, but try to reinterpret or add, complement what's in there. And that's also being done in a third project led by Shao Calvo in our team, collaboration with Max Lab that is working with the imagination, so people, dancers and musicians trying to recall their movements, and yeah, it's maybe again a bit abstract, but my approach has been to create this sort of tool, a virtual environment in which people could compose with space. So they listen to the audio or they use the audio fragments and they enter this virtual environment in which they are drawing audio trajectories in the space, or they are enriching, they're putting expressive velocities on existing trajectories, or using algorithms like swarms or geometries or like ant-like algorithms. Because also in the poem there were like references to swarms or things like that, and we try to use these virtual environments to complement and aid into the reinterpretation of the piece, and make it into, like I said, this sort of composing with space, spatial audio work. Another piece, this was the one with Chavo, where we had a dancer in the lab moving on the music and drawing the trajectories while performing sort of on the audio. I like this one also because it was a hidden, while testing you get these nice things, because the hand tracking, he had to keep the hands in front of the headset. I really like the choreography where the hands always had to stay in front of the face. It was a technological constraint, actually leading to, in my view, some beautiful things. Besides the creation and composition of these things, using these technologies to compose music, we also think about the presentation, because not everybody has a lab like that or a speaker setup like that. So this is just a small illustration of this first piece, The Being Hungry, that we presented in Mozilla Hubs, an online environment where we reduced the spatial recording to just a binaural stereo recording, in which you could walk around and re-experience. It's just a small demo of how you would see the piece, and you eventually, like, this is how the piece would have looked if you would enter in a lab. You got, while being at home, wearing a headphone, you could get sort of the sense of how the experience in the lab would have been. So we are also trying to think on how can you present and share these new ways of taking a piece, of reinterpreting a piece in such a way. Yeah, I'm a bit hesitant to show the last slide. I was thinking, like, how can I maybe also provoke some questions here? And these are just like some dualistic terms, but basically my work, personally, what I've liked the most is to really work on the boundary of things, so the real and the virtual, the tangible, the intangible. I put like some heavy words on there, but they're just examples of how I am more interested not so much in one or the other, but really the oscillations between the two and the friction sometimes between the two. Because they can, yeah, for me personally, give some interesting work, let's say. Okay, so that was my presentation.
So it's very interesting to have all these three very different approach between artists and researchers. So, and for me, it's I would like to also, for example, to ask Enrique, when you start create your piece that we've seen you performing. So your main idea was to make it tangible, yes, but how you more or less just you also worked on the programming behind it. So how was this between development of this piece, make it tangible, and also programming the sound, and how to develop it, just how it was working for you for the performance?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I could have done the same with a lot of failures and no's, no? But the thing is, it was I needed to create a space where I could just explore materiality and then that had have a connection with the programming. There is a lot of programming underneath. Actually, it's a lot of machine learning and sound synthesis, etc., etc. And you see it all in there in the laptop, so I can show the patches and everything. But the important thing is that I don't know, when I'm performing, people don't look at the computer, but they look at the action, the sound, as if it was a cello. And for me, that's the big message that, well, obviously there is something there with technology probably, because they hear things that are not usually happening when you touch a paper, so to say. But at the end, I want to normalize the situation between a digital instrument and the audience and myself, where I access digital programming, a lot of digital programming in different frameworks, but in the traditional way. Because if you see, everyone knows how to touch a drum set, It's just like that. Obviously, if you learn and then you study and then you continue, then you can access more stuff from the drum set or from any other instrument. So then I want to provoke the kind of exploration to the materiality, and then obviously this is all connected to the computer and the digital programming that is in there.
But it's also very interesting because it's you walking to the light when you play, when you performance. And normally if you're playing, I don't know, violin or piano, this is, well, that you see keys, they are not disappearing, but your light, you have really impression that the light gives you rhythm how to work on this.
I mean, in the pieces where it's all made of wood, then it's mostly a kind of blind exploration. So I often close my eyes and then I leave myself, also people, because I don't know, they don't look at the instrument anymore. I mean, there's an interesting thing that is like, when you approach a material, then you see it from the distance, and then you first, it's a visual object, right? And then you have an expectation of, what is gonna happen when you touch it. Then when you touch it, then you put your eyes in your fingers, so to say, that there is a kind of intimate relationship, but you're also reading and seeing the material with that kind of action and perception. That's very much into embodied music cognition, and so it's basically the modalities of exploring the materiality changes a lot when you are able to touch and to explore it from different distances. And I think that basically this is the point, that when we are able to touch, then we are also having the same perception and action loop, but in a for me it's the perfect sense, and this is why I'm exploring it.
And
this is interesting.
yes.
I've seen you performing on Thursday. It was really impressive. But I didn't see from where I was at the point of view, I didn't see that indeed the screen was covered with something which was engraved in the relief, 3D. And I didn't see the relationship between this engraved annotation and your play. How do you translate the gesture that you have on this engraving through the computer system? Do you measure it with some techniques, and then there is an algorithm?
Let me just explain it in a minute. So basically, you have the possibility of analyzing a database of sounds. Then you have sound files in your computer, and then you chop them in small grains, like something like 20 milliseconds grains, and then you have a lot of grains, right? And then for each of these grains, you run an analysis, extracting something like 40 characteristics from each of these grains, like informing you about the amplitude, for example, the volume, but also the spectral profile, the noisiness, the roughness, many things. No? And then you create a database for each of these grains, then you have 40 characteristics, okay? And then in real time, what I'm doing is the same analysis. I chop the sound I create on the surfaces, and then the algorithm tries to find the grain in the database which matches better,
Okay.
that one that I'm playing live. And then resynthesizes sound, taking sounds from the database, okay? So input and output is completely decoupled, is separated, but then it's driven by my activity. And just for finalizing, the thing is that you could actually synthesize sound with a symbolic machine, right? That you say, go with a cursor, and then find, do this and that and that. But if you do that, it's quite deterministic, right? At the end, you don't have the decision to somehow create things that you don't know. When I'm accessing the algorithm, I do it with, the noisiness of my fingers and without knowing which grain I'm gonna play. So I could have used a cursor to find, to play noises and sounds, but I want to make it without deciding. And that's what, for me, the interesting thing, when you approach the computer without means to be deterministic.
Okay, so that's not deterministic, and then you learn to play with it,
Yeah.
and to master it. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. I wouldn't have liked to see the patch, I can say. So that might be a personal thing for me. I have to think of also in the classical concert. You also have the people that are setting as they want to what's happening. Seeing the expression in the movements is something else than seeing the analytical things inside. When you look at the piano being played, the expression of the pianist are interesting. The hammers taking the chords, for me, less so. So I like that it was not
Yeah,
shown.
but this would be a question also for you. Maybe you recreate that dialogue also. I have questions for you. That is, if you have tried to do the same experience of the piano, but without an instrument which is discretized, what happens if you do it in a violin, for example, which is more continuous? It's still discretized somehow. There is a string and it sounds only there, but at least this continues. And I don't know, because I think the issue of discretizing music and the parameters of music also affects the system, no? But what happens if you have a drum set, for example, ritual drum set, no?
Yeah, here for this specific piece, obviously, we wanted to rely on the expertise of the pianist. They were professional pianists playing and performing piano with this. So the alignment of the keys was very crucial, which wasn't perfect. And so most of them, I was lucky that they were so good that they didn't have to look at the keys. But yeah, it will open up things. Attaching like a physical to the virtual, putting a virtual thing on top is a very interesting aspect because of you're trying to extend to new instruments. In this study, it was more like replicating what's already there, replicating things that are already happening. So no, I haven't tried it yet, but in the future.
Well, of course, you have the space alignment between the avatar or the virtual and the real person. But what about the time alignment? Because if you take this piece of Steve Reich's face, it's so much complicated. If you see the delay that you have in all this digital system, and the time lag that you have, how do you cope with that?
It's a very good question because with all these mediated things, and I guess Enrique also had, you will always have a latency.
Yes,
you always have, and with machine learning, you need to do it fast enough, and it's never instant. Even the sound of your voice reaching me is not even instant. But with all these layers of high technology, it becomes slower. Concretely, here the latencies were controlled well enough to facilitate real-time interaction. So visually, auditory, it was all okay. For the agent, that was a dynamic algorithm, a model that adapts the face in a dynamic way, like an oscillator, not following, because you can do tempo tracking and all these things, but the agent, the algorithmically controlled agent, was adapting its face adaptively based on the score to the real-time playing of the pianist, because the pianist, as a human, is speeding up, slowing down sometimes, and in this piece, this is also why we chose that piece. The pattern is always repeated, So it allowed us to just focus on tracking the face using that algorithm. And it worked very well. Like in time base, it was very good because the task was constrained and the algorithm for tracking. Also, the result from this first study, what didn't work well was the co-regulation with the agent. And this is maybe an obvious result, but even it was so strong that the frustration from the pianist that you're interacting with an agent, and it was a pre-recording, so head nodding and communicative movements between the players was really not aligned. So obviously in a real performance you have surprises, you have things happening that you sort of expect of your partner to happen at a certain point. And because we were using a recording that was just sped up, slowed down, so in terms of movement it was not good. In terms of music and face it was really well done using these algorithms, let's say. Yeah. I don't know if it answers your question, but sort of.
Claire, and I have also a question for you, because you also, for example, this sound piece that you show us, Zoria, but you made another sound piece when, for example, you are trying to read some kinds of what is happening in a space, and just not in the space, I mean in the space like now here, and after to interpreting and to constructing some kinds of more or less, like you say, just do yourself utilities just to interpret it. And did you already try to do it with the weaving?
With the women?
Yes, weaving facilities, like just the weaver, just like you used in your installation data.
With the weaving,
yeah.
If I tried to use a weaving machine to weave so this installation was using a knitting machine. So a knitting machine is one thread that loops, and there is a technique to make pattern, which we call jacquard. This is how you make your jumpers with patterns. So this installation was it's an old one, and it's 2012. And here I was. So usually when we ask me for an exhibition to do a piece, then I have my antennas and I go and scan around the space, and then I record the memory of the space. So I'm recording with the antennas, not the sound, but the electromagnetic activity. So you have to imagine in every cable, every electronics, there's a kind of aura coming through, or you have radios, except like I said at the beginning. And so here I will record, and it's and then I will put it in the knitting machine, and it will record, of course, in a very, very small resolution. So if you compare like a knitting point to today a USB key, it's a very small portion of this. But it's the idea of having like memory encoded, and it was inspired by the fact that every sound we produce leaves a trace in the matter. So I read a really interesting article where they were saying, for example, in the very well protected caves, when you could have the sound of people who were inside, thousands of years ago, or activity which was inside, because every single sound we provoke, there's a vibration, and it's like it stays inside the matter. But we don't have the technology to see for now as small as that, but we could reread like the walls and the architecture from this. So this is how I was inspired for these pieces. So really kind of like a memorial.
Yeah, because this is a really amazing piece. Just that I found it's really very impressive. And you told that it's not new one, but it was like in 2015 or something like this. But I found it's very interesting how you made this approach between again old technique and new technique. It's always something between some kind of the invention that is rather now, and not something that you use that already existed for 1,000 years.
Well, actually, also a lot of the work there at the time was trying to understand, because I was hacking my knitting machines and connecting computers to them and saying, okay, what do computers and knitting machine have to say to each other if you exclude the human? And a lot of the work was was trying to find a common language, because we can translate many things, but if you want to translate something, of course you're going to lose some information, you're going to gain another one, but you try to find a language in which it's interesting, otherwise it doesn't mean much. And so it was a whole research where the weaving looms for this technique, the jacquard, were inspired our modern computers through the binary codes, and it was Ada Lovelace and Charles Babbage who were working on the analytical engine, so the first like big calculation machine, and they saw the jacquard card. So it's these cards, punched cards, punched hole cards, where the patterns of the weaving looms would be encoded, and they said, wow, this is interesting. With this binary system, we could create a computational system. And actually, what's interesting is that Basile Bouchon, who invented these the first punch hole cards, his father was Orgue Barbarie. Yeah, the punch hole card where you play with and so it's interesting how this language of sound then gave these textiles, and these textiles gave computers. And so when you put sound into a knitting machine, these 0 and 1s are quite, they're very logic in a way. I mean, there is this very common ADN inside. So it's always, I think, in the research, trying to find something where things can connect. Otherwise, and what they can say to each other.
Yeah, because I like this piece very much as well as your recent piece, Zoria. And Zoria, this is coming from the ideas, the gardeners of some kinds of Slovenian gardeners.
Yes, it was in honor of Russia, where it was born, partly born. It's Zorias is the guardians of the auroras, and they are the daughters of the sun, auroras borealis. So that's why I named it.
And also, just for example, I know that you have a lot of questions, but that's also interesting that I like. I have a question. For example, now in your set with the pianist. So the pianist, they had wheel, clavier, and they have this virtual one. And did they try to play only a virtual one?
No. Again, I should try more. Already 2 suggestions, but no. I can imagine. Yeah, it would be interesting.
Yes, it's extremely interesting, because this is normally that's like you told. This is professional pianists. They know exactly they know very well all these claviers, but if it's virtual, so it's
and positional keys for me. When I'm like in the train and I play some amateur piano, I cannot do it on the table. I need the feedback from the piano, both sound as tactile, like a keeping. If I try to do it on the train, if I'm practicing or whatever, I cannot do it. Well, an expert pianist, I've seen them do it, just practicing on a surface. They don't really need even because the motor programs are so trained. Again, it would be very interesting, I think, to do. But
because I'm thinking that maybe in the future we'll have totally virtual environment. So just that people will be in this environment that we can imagine that they will be sleeping or just to be in some kind of special state. And it's really nice to.
And already it's not so like I've seen recently. Again, the company, I will not name it here. Let's not break them in a small space. But like a wristband, they bought a company with EMG, and just using, because there are so many nerves in the wrist, that just using that wristband you can control a virtual hand, or they connect it to a robot, and just by using the nerves that are here, the signals that you send, it's able to connect, so you don't even need. And they obviously bought this company to move away from the keyboard and the mouse that we all use for already quite some time. This tactility, it will be missed, I think. I think everyone for now cannot imagine. Enrique has more to say about that. But
as you said, the body interaction is so much important. If you play keyboard, you have all the physical aspect of the touch pressures, the force, the velocity. well, as long as you don't simulate that, you will have a different music.
Yeah, yeah. At least a different expression to it. Yeah.
But just what I find interesting also is how we're tending to go in more and more invisible, where we're going into all these different realities without even knowing, but behind all these systems are very heavy. So it's also how all these machines are heating up and producing a lot of energy to give another one. It's also interesting how we're like when everything is like at the end technology will maybe be a powder or like makeup or something. And but all the systems also are still here. There's infrastructure. We talk a lot about the clouds, and I think it's also all these. So.
I wanted to ask you actually about the invisible, because there is the invisible and the unknown, so to say, right? Because maybe it's also about that, like perceive also in your work, that the computers don't know anything about the unknown. They can perceive things which are invisible, but there are things which are invisible and also unknown. And this is where we work as artists. And I wanted to ask you about that also in the sense of how you explore techniques which appear in the 19th century, where still or technology or technological developments were still quite connected with other fields like religion, right, or other types of ways of knowing, right, which were still present. Because now in what we are doing, basically we're gonna embed, so to say, the Quran in religion or other ways of knowing. And I think when you are talking about, I don't remember whether those embroideries or garments as well as technology, religion, myth, cultural development, it's all one, right? But we are here splitting the things we are doing in many, so to say, departments. And I wanted to ask you about how you approach that, actually.
Well, actually, so in the 19th century, you have to imagine there was the first communication, so the first electrical telegraph, and so with the first time the people could communicate with somebody disembodied, which is today very normal. So we navigate in all these systems where we talk to each other, through the ether, and all our phantom identities are scrolling through the air. But it was at the time, and for good reason, very, very obscure. And what is this new world? What are we doing this invisible today? Nobody really thinks about it. I mean, not so many people, but but what's interesting also is a lot of our technology today has been shaped by the ambitions there. So there is Edison, who had the whole the schematics, and he was trying to make a machine to talk to the dead, for example. And the phonograph was inspired by this. Or Alexander Bell, who had lost his brother, and he was also trying to make a communication system, because it was also the beginning of all the spiritualist religion. So the spiritualists was where these people would come around and do a seance, and these women mediums who would imitate with their body the telegraphs would try and communicate with the dead, and there was all this notion of fluid energy, electricity going through. So they would construct these machines to try and understand what was happening. What's interesting is there's a lot of occult, I think, much more than we think in our technology. And also if we think of today, what we have, the heritage of these 60s psychedelic, a lot of drugs, a lot of trying to go in different realities, who make all this Silicon Valley. Also, I think there are things that are much less, objective than what the science with a big S is trying to push. And I don't really believe in it. I think it's much more porous. And when you travel and you see how people use electronics, for example, and also I find it very interesting where all of a sudden, people use electronics to make something else. I mean, in India you have electronic telephones to talk to God, and this is embedded in the culture. It's not a problem. Or in Japan, where you have all this no problem of having cyborgs relationships or being. I mean, all this is kind of a cult, and I think. This is all the interesting thing of this kind of collective hallucination maybe we're living in. I don't know. That's why I'm saying all these invisible things, but they're very heavy systems. So I don't know. It's maybe these questions I tried to.
Would you say that it's a bit loss of the awareness of this hallucination? Because when you described talking to ghosts, it was seen as obscure, and in the beginning seemed like a big thing, and rightfully so. But right now that I'm having so many identities floating around, and it's amazing to see these new people that never had a VR set or this hologram. When it's VR, it's quite impressive. They are always a bit shocked, and you have to adapt, getting in and getting out. With AR, that you have a hologram suddenly standing, and I've done this with 40 people, they adapt so quickly. My mother, she was immediately pushing buttons in the air, and the weirdness of it was not triggered. There's a bit of a wow effect, but it's more like a gimmick or a sensational effect, not what's actually happening. Would you say that it's like moving towards, we forget a bit that this unknown or this invisible and the impact that technology has related to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're constructing realities all the time, you know? I mean, the world we live in, the way we interact with things, the images we have, so I think there are a lot of realities in which we go and not go, and people who have access to different realities than us. I mean, like for example, we're working now for an exhibition on the communities of shifters who are teenager girls who do astral travels, and they make apps in their astral travels, and they activate them, and they are already just with their body creating worlds in which they go in, which looks like video games. So it's always, I don't know, I think it's hard because some people can manage to access to these different realities with very low-tech things, and these high-tech, I don't know, I think as humans we're a bit strange anyway, no?
Okay.
I don't have the answer.
Do you have some questions?
Closing on humans are strange. I think it's proper.
Oh, because they're very different. It means that just we never know what even somebody sitting near you thinking, and to know what is. People like 2 kilometers from here thinking it's really not possible. But we hope that we probably will be able at some moment just to read some kind of the brain waves. Just there is a lot of research about it. Maybe not totally in the sense of the words, but at least some sort of the information like sensation. So, but still, I'm not sure that we will answer the question. Okay, so I think that thank you very much to be present here with us and to take part in the lazy talk. And I hope that our spectators who was following us on YouTube enjoyed. Sorry, we didn't take questions this time, but if you will have, so you can always write, and we will try to follow it. And thank you very much for Nadine, who hosted us, and Imal, who initiated this year this talk.
And we'll see next June 12th?
Yes, and next laser talk will be in Imal on the 12th of June, and it will be devoted to the olfactory. So just the sensation of how we feel things, but how we smell them. Thank you very much.